For starters, for those who don't know, can you introduce yourself and give us a brief description of who you are give us a brief description of yourself.
My name is David Hollin. I'm a designer and technical artist at Niantic Incorporated. We are the team that made Pokemon Go, and yeah, that's me.
And what were some of your personal contributions to Pokemon Go?
Some of my personal contributions to Pokemon Go include AR functionality, the buddy system, and how Ditto was eventually spawned into the wild are the three ones I can think of off the top of my head. But we're a pretty small team, and so everyone sort of had a pretty big impact on just everything. So,
are you a player yourself?
Yeah, I play. I eat my own dog food. So.
Who's your Pokemon buddy?
Currently, it's Kabuto. So I'm trying to get a Kabutops.
Okay.
They're pretty rare. But I was actually trying to do that before Gen 2 hit. But yeah, I still got 7 more candies left before I get involved.
And do you happen to get any special perks being a member of the team?
I guess a perk would be if there's a bug that really annoys me, then I can fix it.
That's it. That's a good one. That's a good one. Okay, so can you tell us a bit about the game's launch? Did the huge surge of popularity surprise you or your team?
Absolutely. We were so thrown into the loop. We had no idea, but we had no idea that it was going to be as successful as it was. There's sort of no precedent for it, both on the Pokemon IP side and on our Niantic side, that sort of suggested that it was going to have such an explosive amount of traffic and people interested in playing and stuff.
And there was a lot of everyone knows about the server issues that plagued the early days of that. Was that tough for you to deal with? I'm sure you got a lot of
it was pretty tough. But at the end, I'm not a server engineer, so I wasn't sure exactly what the issue is. The only thing I'm aware of, the only thing I know for a fact is that it was nothing that anyone on this world has ever had to face, and given the time frame. So with that in mind, I don't know if there's anything we really could have done differently. If we could go back in time, it was crazy.
And so popularity, has, I don't want to say it dropped off, but popularity has changed since those early days. Did you notice any upsurge of popularity again when Gen 2 launched?
Yeah, we did. We did notice a noticeable uptick in user engagement and people who have lapsed returning to play the game. I don't really have any specifics on hand, but that's generally sort of whenever we sort of do like a large promotional update, that sort of stuff happens. We expect, a game is a game, and we expect people to sort of, people who are dedicated to stay with it, but people who are sort of, as a fad, sort of jumping in and seeing what it is, we don't expect them to stay indefinitely.
So at the end of the day, do you think your job is more to cater to the solid user base, or do you still hope to draw in more of the casual players, perhaps?
I think it's a delicate balancing act. I can't comment on official team policy, but my personal philosophy is that I think both are necessary in order for a game to be successful. In order for the ecosystem of a massively multiplayer online game to be successful, you need to have players who are extremely dedicated, hardcore, like this game is a way of life for them, and you need people who are sort of not very familiar, just sort of want to explore and learn more about it. That kind of duality is important.
Are you a fan of the Pokemon games in general?
I am. I grew up on them. My very first game was Pokemon Green version when I was 5, back in 1996.
Oh wow!
So I've been with Pokemon from the beginning. Definitely went through obsessive phases as a child. Have played every Game Boy game, start to finish, that has come out since then, all the way up until Sun and Moon. And it was actually a coincidence that I ended up at Niantic. I wasn't necessarily hired for my Pokemon knowledge.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And were you with Niantic prior to the Pokemon Go days?
I was with Niantic when we were still a internal team at Google before we spun out and became an independent company.
Oh, okay. So you were involved with the development of oh my god, help me out with
Ingress.
Ingress, yes, sorry.
Not directly. There were a couple other products that we sort of had cooking in the mixture when I first joined. I help out here and there with Ingress from time to time, but that was not something that I had a direct hand in sort of development of. For me, it was Pokemon Go that most of my time at the company is spent working.
If you had your own way, would you make Pokemon Go a little bit more like the games in terms of some of the obvious player battles and features that aren't quite there yet?
To an extent, yeah. Definitely when I first started out, my personal design principles, I just wanted to relive my childhood through this game or hadn't let people relive theirs. I recognize that there are forces at play, that's not the best direction to take this game. So I do think that that too I think is a balancing act. There are things that if we were to make Pokemon Go exactly like the Game Boy games, there are things that just simply won't work. Most people, the whole point of the Game Boy games is that you're the very best and you're going through just basically wrecking every single NPC on your way to the Elite Four, and then you wreck them, and then you're the champion, and then you put the game down and never play it again. Yeah. That sort of model doesn't really work for an MMO where we want to maintain like a living, breathing community of players. It needs a different sort of paradigm, I guess. And whether or not we have figured out what that is, it's hard to say for sure, but we're still, working on it and trying to hone in on what that could be.
And what's the level of contact Niantic has with the Pokemon Company in terms of is there any dialogue between them making the main release games with you to continue to develop Pokemon Go?
Our relationship with them is very close. They are they are the license holders, so they have to make sure that every single instance of a use of Pokemon is very true to the IP. The Pokemon IP is one of the strongest IPs in the world. So with that in mind, our relationship with them is very close, and they're part of almost every design decision that we make going forward and in the past.
And so there were some balance issues also when the game first came out, with some of the Pokemon being more overpowered than others, and there's still some, you hear talk about that before, like Vaporeon was a very common one in the early days.
Yeah.
Was that intentional by chance? Because players at home might know that Vaporeon is actually a pretty, overpowered Pokemon even in the original game. So
yeah, it was. Our team that when we were working on it was so small that to be able to game balance 150 Pokemon, 146 or so, was a very big challenge for a very small number of people, so we knew that we wouldn't get the formula right the first time. But that being said, we do try to make strides to buff and nerf as needed to sort of balance it moving forward, and we plan to continue to do that in the future.
Okay. And so you mentioned some new features that were implemented somewhat recently. Like there were some Easter egg features, like when Christmas came around, you had the Pikachu with the Santa hat, all those things like that. Is there more plans with that going forward? Nothing specific, obviously, being no more plans. And the way Ditto was
there's a very big one coming soon.
Oh, really?
That I won't comment on, but I think people will get a kick out of it. I think it'll be fun. It'll definitely make a splash.
Okay. And I'm sure everyone wants to know, since day one, there's been rumors, there's been mentions, the legendaries.
Yeah.
Is there any official work on perhaps bringing them in soon? Or?
I don't think I can comment on the state of the legendaries, except that we haven't forgotten.
You haven't forgotten.
Yeah, they will. Legendaries are going to be pretty awesome.
Okay.
Eventually.
And so Gen 2 is released. Is it part of the plan to eventually attempt to perhaps release all 700 plus Pokemon in the game, in Pokemon?
We'll see if that it comes to that.
Because that's kind of a lot, you know.
That is a lot of Pokemon. Certainly, we have the infrastructure moving forward to make that a possibility if need be. My personal opinion is that there's a lot of work to be done on the sort of the game play itself, adding more features, giving players more activities that they can participate in, rather than just like constantly dumping more Pokemon at them. So we'll see what happens.
Okay. And what is some of your advice for somebody starting the game new today? You think it's still a game that a new player can jump into easily?
It's a good question. Last time I gave advice, it got misconstrued as hinting a future thing. I was just like, if you're a new player, you should save your candies to evolve them, is what I meant. And then suddenly save your candies, oh my god, breeding, like, oh my god, double XP event coming. So I feel really nervous giving advice. But if I could give advice, it would be that lucky eggs are useful. The best way to level, I find personally, is to catch a lot of Pokemon and then chain evolve them. So catch a lot of Pidgeys and evolve them all into Pidgeotos while using a lucky eggs.
Yeah.
Like a short 30-minute window. I find that is a really effective way to level up.
Okay. And so we covered the legendaries. Is there perhaps any other new features that are more closer to the horizon you could probably speak about?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't think I can really speak about anything specific. There will be events obviously tied to the calendar year, and then there will be there's things that we've discussed that are on the horizon, such as trading and PvP. But those are kind of more long term. In terms of short term, we'll see.
Because there are certain like region specific Pokemon and whatnot, and trading is a feature that I'm sure everyone has been asking for since day one. Yeah. So, anyhow, so going forward, is Pokemon Go a franchise you see spanning many years, like from here on?
I actually do. Yeah, I think that as long as we can continue to sort of polish it into a state of like a sort of a self-sustaining online community, I could see it having a very long lifespan for sure among dedicated players. And then outside Pokemon Go, just location-based games in general, I feel like got a huge boost. Augmented reality also got a huge boost from Pokemon Go's success, which means that we've now sort of opened the doors to a whole new style of gaming that it'll be very, very interesting to see what people can sort of design for in that space, because it's very much in its infancy. Kind of like how all first-person shooters sort of share the same mechanics.
Yeah.
Pokemon Go and Ingress share the same mechanics, but they're very different games. And so to see what other developers potentially could do with this, or what we could do with this in the future, is something I'm very excited about.
And what's been your most difficult thing that you've encountered since Pokemon Go launched? Like, was it the feedback? Was it, some of the implementation of features not working as you intended, or?
Yeah, the hardest thing, so as in like hardest...
experience you encountered during your time?
So it's tough when you sort of agree with what fans want, but then you end up becoming the punching bag for them for that feature. I would say that's pretty tough. I used to read a lot online communities, specifically both Silph Road and Pokemon Go subreddit, just to sort of gauge user interest, sentiment, what they're excited about, what they're not excited about, that sort of stuff, and help that sort of guide development. But I find that these communities can often get a little bit too toxic. I know that me and a lot of other team members sort of find it much better for us to just not be involved, which is kind of a bummer because it's really meant to be like an avenue for like engagement with the developers, but we're people too, so that's definitely something I find really difficult.
Okay. So since, you're a fan of Pokemon, I assume you're a fan of Nintendo as well. And I've been asking a lot of the video game people this question this weekend. What are your current thoughts? What are your thoughts on the Switch, the Nintendo Switch?
So I have a Switch and I have Breath of the Wild. I really like the Switch. I think it's a fun console. Although I don't really use handheld, game devices very much. So it really moves from like maybe my bedroom to my living room when my roommates want to hang out and play and back, which is very convenient. But I'm not necessarily someone who will like take it places.
Oh, okay.
That being said, I really like the new Zelda game. It's part of the reason why my talk today was kind of minimal. I procrastinated a bit, playing.
Okay. That makes sense. And lastly, can you give us a closing message for fans of the games, fans of Pokemon, and any other closing message?
Closing message would probably be spend your candies.
Hopefully that doesn't get misinterpreted.
Oh, it's
down the
okay,
road.
because if it does, then it'll even out all the savior candies from before into a nice neutral.
Exactly.
So.
Hopefully that's the way this works out.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much for the interview.
No problem.
And let's just